Mr. Bilas,
How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing all right, thank you.
I want to ask you about your playing career at Duke. First of all, 4-year starter for Coach K. How was your whole experience, playing for the Blue Devils?
Well, I loved it. I mean, it was a long time ago, but
Yeah.
but I loved it. Coach K had been at Duke. I think my first year as a player was his third as a coach, so we were both really young. But and I played with amazing people and amazing players. I played with Johnny Dawkins and Mark Allery, David Henderson, Tommy Amaker, Quinn Snyder, Billy King, Danny Ferry, Kevin Strickland. I mean, we had a bunch of great players, so it was really a great group to be with.
Nice. Okay, so then you graduated from Duke and you ended up coaching there, right, from 1990 to 92?
Yeah, I had played overseas in Europe for a few years in Italy and Spain, and then I got admitted to law school, and Coach K offered me a graduate assistant position. So I was a GA for
Nice.
3 years, and the teams were really good when I was there.
Yeah.
With Leitner and Hurley Hill, so pretty lucky.
Cool. Okay, and then you get into broadcasting. Kind of talk about how you transition from a coaching or a player role into an analyst and what you do today.
Well, I started out practicing law actually, so I was a full-time attorney. I was a litigation attorney, and I got an offer to do games on the radio on the side. So I started doing that, and one thing led to another. And ESPN offered me some games, so I started doing that. And then after a short period of time, ESPN offered me a full-time gig as a broadcaster. So I stayed with my firm. It turned out I'm not practicing anymore, but my role is of counsel. It's called.
Okay.
So I'm still with my law firm, but I do 40, 50 games a year, studio, you name it, the NBA
Right.
draft, and I've been doing that for a long time. So it's been really fun. I've been lucky to have this job.
Awesome. Obviously a college basketball fan and player. I watch, college game day every Saturday morning. What are some of the best atmospheres, you've been a part of with that crew?
Pretty much everywhere we've been, the atmospheres have been great,
Right.
but the best ones are, I put Kansas, Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina up there at the top. But we've had great. We've been to Arizona, we've been to Texas Tech has had a spectacular atmosphere. Michigan State is always one of the very best. Both Kentucky and Michigan State almost filled their buildings for us. I mean, Kentucky did fill the building back in 2010. They had 20,000 people there. We've been lucky. We've been at the Palestra in Philly. There are very few places we haven't been, frankly,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Florida's fantastic. It just depends on the year, but the atmospheres they make the show, really.
Yeah, no doubt. That's cool. Okay, so I'm curious as someone, trying to figure out what I want to do with basketball, and watching you from afar on ESPN, every year. How do you prepare for games that you're going to call and analyze, on air? What's the whole process behind that for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's not just that I sit down a few days before the game. I mean, I really feel like I'm preparing all the time.
Hmm.
So I'm constantly looking at film, watching games, watching players, and I keep I keep a book with scouting reports of teams and players. But in addition to sort of the overall knowledge you have about the landscape and particular teams and players, I usually start really my heavy duty prep probably 3-4 days before the game starts. And sometimes I'm working on multiple games in a
Right.
given week or a given day. And then, I usually go to practices for the teams the day before the game, watch a ton of film, and then I put together scouting reports for each team. So they're essentially charts.
Yeah.
But usually making the charts gets all the information into my pea brain, and I rarely look at them during the course of a game.
Right. Yeah, I can tell. Okay, so obviously you're on air all the time calling all the best games. In the last, 5 to 10 years, what are some of the most amazing games, you've been a part of that you remember?
The Duke Carolina games have been spectacular. I was on the crew that called the Syracuse UConn 6 overtime game. The games we've had in Maui have been spectacular. And so there have been NCAA tournament games, both, I've done Final Four for ESPN International, but also back in the day, ESPN traded me over to CBS for a while. So I was doing the tournament for CBS up through the Elite Eight. The best game I ever had for CBS was in 2005. I had the Arizona-Illinois Elite Eight game, went to overtime. It was a stunning Illinois comeback and, stuff like that. I mean, there's so many of them, it's hard to keep track of the ones that are really good or that stand out as the best because, it's a dream come true just to do any game.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, I'm kind of curious about your opinion on the future of the NCAA in regards to name, image, and likeness. Like, what are your thoughts on, how that will play out?
I don't see any downside to it. I mean, I do think that it's going to continue to be slow. That the NCAA is got, they call them guardrails, which is a nice way of saying restrictions. So I don't think there should be any restrictions. I think everybody else gets to make money according to what the market will bear. I don't see why it should be any different for players. Excuse me. So, the NCAA is kind of begging Congress to give them antitrust protection. I don't know that they're actually going to get that. But if they do get it, they're not going to get an antitrust exemption, but if they do get a law that preempts, a federal law that preempts all the state laws, I think it's going to be a lot more generous than any NCAA rule would be. But at least it'll be uniform form across the board, which the NCAA has complained like that would be, this horrifying thing if they didn't have uniformity. I think they're wrong there. But I think it's a positive step forward that the players are getting to share. At least we'll get to share a little bit in this multi-billion-dollar business when everybody, literally everyone else gets their fair market value.
For sure. What do you think about this upcoming year? Obviously, different type of season, but are you optimistic about it and excited?
Depends. Excited, yes. Optimistic depends on the day. I'm hopeful. Let's put it that way. I'm hopeful. I think with infection rates and hospitalizations going up as we head into November, it's tenuous at best, and so we'll see. I think we're going to have a good effort at getting a complete season, but
no doubt.
You just don't know. Nobody knows, and we don't even know if we'll finish football, frankly. But I'm hopeful, and I know everybody's going to do whatever they can. But this is an issue of first impression in our lifetimes. We've never had to deal with an issue like this. Last pandemic of this scale was 1918, and so it doesn't provide much of a roadmap.
No doubt. Okay, one more question back about your playing career I missed. So you went to a Final Four and a national championship game, and you've also obviously been around those games, post playing career. What do you see kind of the difference in now versus then as far as just like coverage? And I'm just kind of curious about how the landscape of just the attention on those two games have changed.
It's so much bigger now. It was big then, but it's way bigger now. So we played in Reunion Arena where the Dallas Mavericks used to play in Dallas, Texas, and it's not even there anymore. It got knocked down a long time ago. But Reunion Arena, I think, seated like 18,000 people. Now they're in football stadiums, so 70,000 people go to the games. Yeah. So, the amount of money, the amount of attention, the social media, you name it, we didn't have any of that. But 25 years before that, they didn't have color television. So, I mean, things changed, and it's always going to be bigger than it was before. And who knows? I mean, it doesn't seem like it can get any bigger than it is now, but it will. It'll get bigger. No
doubt. I'm from Wisconsin, but now I go to Winthrop. I'm on the team there. What are your thoughts on Wisconsin basketball's program in the last decade or two?
Well, last decade or two, Bo Ryan came in and did an amazing job to make Wisconsin not only a Big Ten contender but a national contender, and went to a couple Final Fours. Right. And the championship game, really incredible positioning of the program. And I think Greg Gard has carried it forward. I think this year Wisconsin's got a chance to be one of the best teams in the country, and certainly one of the best teams in the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten will be the best conference in the country. So if you can win the Big Ten, you can win the whole thing. They're older. They've got really good depth, and they play a really hard-nosed style. So I like Wisconsin's chances.
For sure. Okay, so from afar watching you on TV, you work with Reese Davis, Seth Greenberg, and Jay Will, all those guys. Great personalities. How is it just working with those type of guys on air?
Oh, it's great. Reese Davis is the best teammate I've ever had in anything. And, Seth Greenberg was not only an outstanding coach, he's just a great guy. And so I think to be able to sit around those guys and listen to their perspectives, and then have somebody like Reese that can bring the best out of everybody. And then we had LaFonso Ellis join us this year, and
Right.
and Fonz is spectacular. So, it's just to be able to hang out with your friends every week like that is unique. And look, I don't know what it's like for the football game day crew, but we couldn't get along any better. We do have on-air differences in the way we see things, which is fun. Reasonable minds can differ on the issues we wind up discussing, and that's the good stuff. But we're just lucky we have a great on-air crew, great people, and then our entire crew. Talk about dedicated pros. When you work with people that are not only experts in their field, whether they work the camera, work the truck, whatever they do, producer, director, you name it, they're superstars in their field. But they're also selfless teammates. You can't beat that. That's pretty good. It's a pretty good deal.
Cool. Yeah. For me, I've, doing this podcast and, just speaking to the world in a sense. Did you, when you first started, doing stuff with ESPN and stuff, did you find yourself, getting better as far as presenting your thoughts and ideas, on TV? Like, how did that whole process? Because obviously you're the best of the best now, but, how did you train yourself to, just, show how you feel about something?
Well, it started when I was in junior high school. Frankly, I took my mother kind of encouraged me to take speech and debate courses, and then I wound up in forensics competitions. And I think going to law school and being a lawyer helped, because you have to be able to spit out a coherent argument, whether it's to a judge, a client, a mediator, a jury, you name it. And then television's the same thing. You have to be able to make your point succinctly and get your point across where it's understandable in a short period of time. And even doing games, oftentimes less is more. If you can make a point briefly, and I'm not always great at that, but that's really helpful. So I of course I've learned over the years, and hopefully I've gotten better. I think we all get better with more experience. But it started for me pretty early with some of the training that I had. I was very fortunate in that regard.
So mid-major level, Winthrop, do you know anything about Winthrop? And if you do, as a program over the years, kind of what do you think about, Winthrop?
Oh, of course. I used to go down to Winthrop and watch practices when Greg Marshall was there, and Pat Kelsey and I have been friends for quite some time. So yeah, I'm very familiar with the Winthrop program. It's a great place, a great school, and a basketball program that's got a lot of history of success, especially over the last 15 years.
Yes, sir. Obviously, times are different now as far as youth basketball, grassroots. I just want to hear your thoughts on the grassroots scene these days. You've got all your circuits and stuff. How do you what are your thoughts on how everything is set up these days in regards to college prospects and exposure?
I really don't have any problem with the way it works. I think it's up to parents and different programs to navigate the landscape. There are more opportunities than ever to play, which I think is a good thing. But there are also opportunities to have a different experience than chasing after every AAU tournament and chasing after exposure. I mean, oddly enough, if you can really play, they're going to find you. None of us played in complete obscurity. So I think a lot of people feel, or some people feel like if they're not, playing center stage at the biggest events, that they're somehow not seen. Right. And you're seen. You're seen. There are very few times when players are overlooked. Oftentimes, like people say, well, Steph Curry was overlooked. he wasn't overlooked. He was absolutely seen. He just continued to get better. People didn't. I saw him play in high school. I wasn't
Right.
watching him when he went to Charlotte Christian, thinking, well, there's a future MVP of the NBA. But he blossomed into that and continued to work. So to me, like, the exposure piece is whatever your path is, do the best you can on that path. And if you can really play, you'll break out.
Yeah.
That won't be the issue.
Okay, so I read that you used to work at the, like those Nike Skills Academies that they used to have.
Mm-hmm.
How was your experience there? Obviously those guys are the pros of this generation. Are there some guys that stick out that you remember coaching in, drills or camp setting?
Oh yeah, all of them. I mean, I worked the very first Skills Academy where there were 25 players in Beaverton,
Mhm.
Oregon, at Nike's headquarters, and so it was guys like Kevin Durant, Kevin Love, Kyle Singler. I mean, just Derrick Rose was one of the very first, and you had times where DeMarcus Cousins. You worked with all these different great young players. And when you're working with a 17-year-old player, and then a year, 2 years later, they're the first pick in the draft. Anthony Davis was one of those.
Mm-hmm.
It was great, and you got to work with some spectacularly good coaches, both high school coaches and coaches from the NBA level. Kevin Eastman, I got the chance to work with. Tate's Lock, just amazing coaches that I learned so much from. And then being with the players, obviously it helped me with the college season, helped me with the draft. But it was also continued to be a great basketball education. You got to know the players and who they were, in addition to what they could do. So it was a wonderful experience.
Okay, obviously college basketball is, programming staple, 94 feet with Jay Bilas. How did that idea kind of start? And, do you just love doing that? Because it's great to watch, on TV.
Yeah, that's kind of you to say. It was born out of a challenge that we received from our bosses to be more creative and find something that we could put into game broadcasts that would be interesting and memorable, that was quick and easy. And so the first one we did, I actually sat down with a producer that I work with named Scott Gustafson, and we said, what can we do, to kind of meet this challenge that we were provided by our leadership. And I had seen on the NFL Network, it was around the combine. I saw it one time, and I've never seen it since. They called it 40-yard dash.
Right.
And they did something similar to what 94 feet has become. But I thought, well, why can't we do something in that vein? And we came up with it. And the very first guest we had, it was at Virginia. We had Jay Wright. Villanova was playing at Virginia. And the very first one we did, I asked, I didn't know what the questions were going to be. I told Jay I'm going to make it up as I go along. And I asked him, what was your favorite TV show as a kid? And Jay was like, oh, that's a good question. What's my favorite TV show? And we got all the way to the opposite, free throw line. He hadn't answered the question yet. I'm like, geez, we got to start over again. Like, hey, holy cow, how hard is this? And so we were laughing about it. And we did the next one in one take. Everything was great, used it. And since then, I don't think there's been more than a couple of times out of the, I don't know, 50 or 60 of those things we've done where we've done it multiple times.
Yeah.
But we wound up using the outtakes from the very first time Jay and I screwed it up. And that was really, this whole thing's been really fun. We've got a lot of great answers. The players are always great. The coaches are great. We've done managers. I did one with Red Panda. So it's just really fun.
Yeah.
It's just been a blast.
So you watch college basketball games year round, straight from the sideline. How have you seen the game change, right before your eyes?
Oh, the game's more wide open now. So when I started playing basketball in college, there was no shot clock. And then, but the ACC was experimenting my freshman year with a 30-second clock. So you had most of the year you played with no clock at all, and you had a 30-second clock. So your head was spinning. There was no three-point shot when I played. So the three-point shot has obviously, it's extended the court and spaced the court now. So it's less of a mid-range game, get closer to the basket game, and more of an up-tempo game. And I think that's made it way more entertaining. It's obviously much more fun for the players.
Mm.
Old people like to harken back to the good old days when guys took 12 to 15-foot jumpers, but
Yeah.
it's a much better game today. And the game's gotten younger. That's been the biggest difference is in every other sport, whether it's college football, pro football, baseball, you name it, you put a team, today's team against a team from 25 years ago, and the team 25 years ago generally would have no chance to beat the current team.
Absolutely.
The current teams. In college basketball, they not only have a chance, some of the old school teams would win because they were older, and these teams are much younger. And oftentimes, old will beat young, even if young is stupendously talented. But the players today are better than they've ever been. I mean, it's not close. When you look at these guys and how good they are at age 18, 19, they would blow away freshmen from 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. It's just that they don't stick around to become juniors and seniors. They're really good ones.
Yeah, that's a really unique perspective. You literally played. Would you say that Trey Young in college, have you ever seen anyone play like him as far as just shot selection and just how electric he was?
Yeah, Allen Iverson, Johnny Dawkins, who I played with. There have been so many great players through the years that have been able to do some amazing things, like Trey Young.
But I'm talking like, have you seen anyone shoot that deep like that? That's crazy to me.
No, that's true. Yeah, I mean, the only guy that I remember that shot that deeper was Dennis Scott, that played at Georgia Tech. And Dennis Scott could shoot a jumper from half court. Like, he was that proficient. Now, didn't do it in a game, but I saw him do that in warmups, and you're going, wait a minute, that's a rhythm-based jump shot from near half court. Like, who's that strong? And he was. So yeah, I mean, you have seen Young was phenomenal in his 1 year in college, and has proven to be an outstanding pro. But there have been other guys that have been tremendous shooters, tremendous scorers. You like, people forget that Wayman Tisdale, who passed away years ago, but he was my year in school. I mean, he scored. He went to Oklahoma. He scored 50 in games his freshman year. He was actually a better scorer as a freshman than Trey Young was.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. NBA draft. Who do you think will be the number one pick, or the top five? Who do you think?
The number one pick, I think, will either be LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards. I think James Wiseman should be in that mix, but I think it's unlikely you're going to see a 6'11" big man as the number one pick in today's game. But he'll certainly be taken. I think Wiseman will be taken in the top three.
Yeah.
There's a small forward who's 6'9" from Israel named Denny Avdia, who's really, really talented and really good. And probably either Tyrese Halliburton of Iowa State or Obi Toppin of Dayton would be up there. Isaac Okoro of Auburn is going to be in that mix, 5, 6, 7, I would say. And then Onyeka Okongwu of USC, who's really a talented big guy, kind of an Amari Stoudemire type big guy that can really run, block shots, finish, lob threat, could step away, and he's got a nice shooting touch. So I think the draft is deep of good players and really good players. I don't know how many great ones there are that you can just say, okay, this guy, like when Anthony Davis came out, you're going, okay, Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah.
There's nobody you can point to and go, well, he's a Hall of Famer. They may be, but they're not projecting it just yet.
No doubt. Well, thank you so much for doing this and answering some of my questions. I've been a big fan for a while, like I told you earlier.
No, it's my pleasure, Nate, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to be with you.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you, and good luck this year.
You too.
Appreciate it.